Hello, everyone. Welcome to our post-Kubecon AMA. My name is Adriana Villela, and I am joined today by fellow Dynatracers, Florian Geigl and Todd Baert. Henrik Rexed was supposed to be moderating the session today, but sadly, he is stuck on a plane. He was on his way home, got stuck in Paris due to snow. It's interesting. I'm in Toronto, Canada, and we have not seen any snow so far today, or thus far this winter/fall. So anyway, we wish Henrik safe travels home. Before we get started, why don't our guests introduce themselves, starting with Florian?
Hey everyone, I'm Florian. I'm a product manager here at Dynatrace. I'm mostly focusing on everything Kubernetes. That's why I also had the pleasure to join Kubecon, which was really awesome this year. And yeah, been with Dynatrace since some years now and continue to focus on Kubernetes and talk everything Kubernetes. Todd, over to you.
Hey, yeah, my name's Todd. I've been with Dynatrace for a few years now. Mostly I've been working on Open Feature, which is an open initiative to kind of standardize and specify feature flagging, as well as some integration points, especially in terms of observability and stuff like that. So I've mostly worked open source, and we have we're a CNCF project, and we have lots of interactions with Open Telemetry and Kubernetes. So yeah, that's why I was at Kubecon, and yeah, excited to be here. Thanks.
Awesome. And as I said, my name is Adriana Villela. I've been with Dynatrace for 2 weeks. I have recently joined the developer advocacy team, and I came before from a developer advocacy role, but I've been in the industry for 24 years-ish. I started as a software engineer, but the last in focusing in Java, but the last few years have brought me to the DevOps, SRE, platform engineering space, and I've been lucky that I've been doing Open Telemetry for the last almost 3 years. So I've been heavily involved in that community. So super excited to have such a great crew along for the ride as we reminisce on Kubecon. So I'll start with Florian. Has this been your first Kubecon? And also, what were your impressions of it?
Actually, it was not my first one. So I've been
Awesome.
in Amsterdam last year. I've been in Valencia. I've also been in Chicago last year. So I think it's my 4th or 5th Kubecon. But I have to say it was one of the best ones so far. It was really well organized. People were really excited. There were a lot of people, new people again. I think it was almost 50% of first-time joiners at Kubecon. That was really amazing. And the experience overall, again, overwhelming, like very good presentations, very good co-located events. So I really enjoyed being there, yeah.
Awesome. How about you, Todd?
Yeah, I was just realizing I've been to Paris, Detroit, Amsterdam, Valencia, and Chicago. So this is my 6th at Salt Lake City. So I guess I'm a veteran now. I hadn't realized this is my 6th, to be honest. Yeah, but it was great. It was really cool. We had our first Open Feature Summit, so that was a co-located event. We had a lot of fun there, a lot of good presentations. And I mean, I like the co-located events too. I also got to go to Observability Day for a bit as well. So I love that. It was the first time I actually attended any of the co-located events.
That's amazing. Yeah, this is, I think, my 5th Kubecon. My first one was in Detroit in 2022. And it blows my mind that I think they said the number of attendees was like 9,000 at this Kubecon, which is amazing. I mean, I think the first time I attended a Kubecon, I was like, oh my God, this feels like a rock concert, especially when you go into like the keynotes and it's like such a big production. And I mean, the video content produced on site is just, wow, mind blowing. So yeah, my favorite KubeCons tend to be the ones in Europe. I feel like those are super, super lively. Not that the North American ones aren't fun, but I do enjoy the European ones. I was in Paris and Amsterdam, and they were just absolutely great. Well, awesome. So let us get started with some of the questions. So first of all, from your point of view, what were the most prominent topics this year at KubeCon and any shifts from the previous years? Who would like to take a go at it?
I can take that. So I think the big topics again were AI. So the first day really evolved around AI. That was really interesting for myself. I see more and more people running AI training models on Kubernetes, and there seems to be a lot of tooling being evolved around it. So that was very impressive. And second, this year it was a lot again about security, which was very surprising for me. The last years I felt it was a lot about cost optimization, resource optimization, but this year security was really big again. They talked about supply chain, like securing the entire supply chain from development until the code reaches production. That was a very good keynote I found. And yeah, overall, I think that were mostly the topics. It was also interesting that the first keynote was lawyers talking about patent trolls that they're trying to fight. And I found it really cool that they're trying to engage the entire community, kind of make everyone feel as one team. We are fighting against them. And it was very interesting to see also how they flipped around the incentives that the patent trolls have, like how they use the community to actually tackle these things and move things around, that it's not interesting anymore for them actually to target the entire CNCF landscape. I found that very good and interesting, and also totally surprising, like seeing lawyers on stage at KubeCon was like, what's happening, you know? It was really good and interesting.
How about you, Todd?
I think the thing that I am excited to see, and I think it started even before this KubeCon, but I think it continued and will continue, is really bringing application development more into the CNCF limelight. So I think before KubeCon and the CNCF in general has really focused on SRE, ops, the people running Kubernetes as a platform. Like, this has been a huge emphasis of the CNCF for a long time for obvious reasons. But now I think the CNCF and KubeCon are really looking to connect with app devs. And I think that's super exciting because Kubernetes itself presents like a unified platform to obviously deploy things on. But there's a lot of stuff that CNCF develops that reaches into app dev too. So things like open telemetry, things like open feature, like the project we're working on. I'm super excited to see app dev becoming more and more a priority for the CNCF. And I believe next year in London, actually, there's a whole talk track dedicated to cloud native app development. And I think that's super interesting to kind of a whole new group of people that maybe haven't up to now been that involved at KubeCon or in CNCF projects in general.
Yeah, that's such a really great point. And I also agree with Florian. I was really floored by the keynotes on the patent trolls. I was it's really interesting seeing like that intersection of like law and technology, and that there is that intersection, and bringing that to light. And also it's interesting to also see like the number of co-located events that keep cropping up every year. Like, I think we had, for example, the first Open Tofu Day, not this time around, but I think the previous KubeCon, which is very exciting. And then like, I want to say there was like Platform Engineering Day, I think is also relatively new. It's like its second or third time, which is very exciting. So and I think, Todd, you mentioned open feature Colo was like, that was the first time in a KubeCon.
Yeah, it was our first like dedicated open feature summit. So I mean, open feature's been at KubeCons for at least everyone I've been there, but it was our first co-located event. So we had some great presentations. There's two that I'll mention, and actually you'll get them on the open feature blog, which maybe we can send a link out for. But yeah, the two that I really liked that stood out to me at our co-located event was, we had a presentation by eBay, who's been helping us with the project kind of the whole time. And they talked about how they're doing like a trillion feature flag evaluations basically a day. And they're using open feature to do that in an open and standardized way, vendor neutral way, that just allows for a lot of integrations into things like open telemetry and that kind of thing. And then there was a really great presentation also about basically how, if you're not essentially doing experimentation when you release a new feature. If you're not kind of looping back and verifying that users actually like your new feature, you're just guessing, which I think is great. And things like Open Feature and Open Telemetry can really help you close the gap on that, and use some of the infrastructure and tools that you already have in your toolbox, probably more for monitoring and app dev and SDLC for kind of experimentation. That's really cool to see.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And, switching gears a little bit, there've been a lot of companies offering resource optimization tools. Is that something that can be done with Dynatrace? Who'd like to take that one up?
So we have our own use cases in our documentation, which I definitely recommend everyone to look at. Maybe we can also share the link in our chat. That would be great. So what you can do with Dynatrace is, of course, you can just explore these resources. So you can use our Kubernetes app and look through all your deployments. We even calculate Slack, like the difference between usage and requests. And you can sort all your deployments based on that and basically figure out manually which one you optimize. But we also have the workflow engine that you can use to automatically keep your deployments optimized. And that's really nice. So I've been using that now for quite some time in my dev cluster, just optimizing the cluster all the time, keeping resources low, and it works really well. And from what I know, we're also trying to get this now to production and seeing that we can constantly keep our production environments, our own, optimized. And in general, I mean, it's interesting, like, as I don't know who asked it, said, like, there's a lot of companies evolving around this topic now. So still security was more prominent this year, but a lot of companies talking about resource optimization. So it's still a huge topic and it's on everyone's mind. And it's interesting to see how much AI is also evolved around that. Like everyone's using AI, everyone's saying they have a secret sauce to resource optimization. I've talked to a lot of vendors, talked to a lot of people. I think what I found very interesting that was not the case in the recent years, it seems people are actually doing automated resource optimization in production. So over the recent years, everyone was like, can I get the GitOps flow? Can I get the pull request for optimizing my resources? But what I've seen more and more talking to people is they actually using the tools and just letting them run in production. So it seems there's some trust being built in these tools. And that's really great to see. Like it's again, something that gets away of the back of developers. Developers don't need to think, how do I need to set my requests or probably something like that. And it's again, like, if you think about the entire platform engineering, I've joined the platform engineering day, for example, was a really good one, like seeing US Bank presenting, Accenture presenting like their entire journey throughout the platform engineering. I think what's so interesting about it is it's all the time, it's about making the life of developers easier. Like, how can we bake all the tools, all the things that they need into a platform? How can we allow them to keep their things optimized? How can we bake in security? How can we check for vulnerabilities? Like, all these things are really focused on how can we make developers just focus on developing and keeping all the other things in the platform baked in. So that was really cool, to see.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and platform engineering is one of those things where like when people start talking about platform engineering, it's like, oh my god, it feels like a rebranding of SRE, but it's like so much more. I mean, the little hot take maybe, I see it as like the next evolution beyond SRE, because it's like SRE concerns plus your developer concerns, so it's like it's more. And it's so exciting to see, like, now there's like a proper name to something that I think has been done for a while. And also having like more supporting like infrastructure and practices and tools around it, which has been really exciting. I want to know from either of you if there's if there's anything like in the platform engineering space where you're like, this, what excites you, and especially like what is there something that you saw at Kubecon that excites you around platform engineering?
I mean, in general, I think I mostly agree with what you're saying about what platform engineering is. I'd say that maybe not so much, as far as I can tell. It's an evolution of SRE. I would say it's an evolution of what we used to call like DevOps, and maybe DevOps was more of like a career path people focused on, whereas platform engineering is more of like a practice that you can apply at your org. And I think, to your point, everybody kind of has been doing this, but I think what platform engineering really, like as a term, what it's allowed us to do is to kind of just say, okay, well, we know that this is needed, and we're going to start building things and treating this large group of internal developers as customers. And I think that's a super important mindset to have. And instead of like, just having everybody become a DevOps specialist, you can just provide a standard platform to all your devs from a few people who really know how to do platform engineering, and it just makes everything so simpler because you have a common way to do telemetry. You have a common way to do basically all of the stuff that you need as an application developer. And I'm really excited every Kubecon because I see more investment in this, and how that looks to me generally is better standards all the time. So open telemetry, all of the signals have gotten so much more mature. We've got events coming down the pipe, metrics, logs, traces, all of these things. Even just our language around them is becoming so much more refined, and it's just allowing us to build integrations more easily, to build platforms more easily, just to communicate about these things more easily. It's just a force multiplier, I guess, to have these kind of standards and specs, so that systems and people can talk to each other more easily about these common problems and common patterns.
Absolutely.
I really like that what you said, like internal customers. That's what I've seen in the platform engineering day. Like everyone is saying, making a product out of their platform internally. So they're actually engaging or having PMs internally that manage and streamline from a strategic point of view their platform engineering. And that's so good to see. Like they're actually treating internal developers as their customers, and it's helping a lot. I mean, all the presentations that I've seen, incredibly what people are doing out there, how much standardization is going into all of that. And also, what I found very good is at the beginning of the platform engineering day, they presented the CNCF white paper about platform engineering maturity and how you can assess it. Because I feel in the past, often these things were buzzwords, like people really didn't know what it means, DevSecOps, DevOps, and whatever. But I feel with these white papers, it gets really tangible, like what are the building blocks? Where do I need to start? They even have an assessment that you can run for yourself, like where am I in the maturity and what would be my next steps? So that's really cool to see, getting people like practical advices and really help them maturing in their journey.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the folks behind that white paper, they work in the tag app delivery group, right?
Exactly.
In CNCF, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, and a lot of heavy hitters in the platform engineering space working in that group, which is really exciting. I think for me, one of the things that I absolutely love about platform engineering, and because I came from a development background, like I hate asking for like capabilities so I can do my dev work, like even like, hey, I need access to Kubernetes cluster to do blah, or I need access to whatever tool to do blah. And having, I think, a lot of tooling in place that gives us these capabilities and basically give us self-serve capabilities so that we're not having to wait around to get what we want to get, because as developers, we're impatient people and we want to do things ourselves. And also it takes the burden off of the platform engineering teams from having to like clickety-click manual stuff. And, they're probably tired of doing the same thing over and over. So that really excites me about platform engineering.
Yeah, developers want to write code, right? They want to write domain code. They want to write, business logic. That's what they want to do. They don't want to struggle with boilerplate and millions of templates and all the stuff that 8 other teams in the company have already done. And I think that's kind of what, going back to what we were saying before about how the CNCF is really starting to branch out into app dev. I think that's why, because as Kubernetes was maturing, it made sense for KubeCon and the CNCF to really focus on all these very, back-end focused initiatives, all these standards around things like container networking, et cetera. But now we're maturing, right? So now we're talking about platform engineering. Well, who's the audience there? It's really developers, right? So you're seeing the same thing kind of happen within the CNCF ecosystem. And I think that's really exciting.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I think it's also a perfect explanation why all the platform engineering now builds on Kubernetes, because Kubernetes is all about standardization. Like you're requesting CPU with your request, like it's standardized. You don't care about all the things that are happening in the background. You have your standardized API. If you think about tools like Crossplane that basically allow you to get the infrastructure using YAMLs, like it's all standardized in the background. And I think that's like Kubernetes gave birth to platform engineering, so to say. I don't think without Kubernetes there would be good tools to actually do that, because you need that basis platform with all the standardization, with all the APIs to actually build something bit like that,
Yeah, absolutely. And it's and to see how far we've come, from those early days of not even having a way to express these things as code and having to like go through some UI or whatever, or like sit in a data center and do that heavy lifting. And now, but it's interesting too, because it's been so heavily abstracted from us that you almost kind of also lose that muscle memory of what it's like to do that more physical work in a data center. So it's like kind of a double-edged sword. I want to switch gears back to I want to see, I think it was Todd who mentioned this emphasis on application development. Was that correct? Did I get it right? Yeah. And the application development track being added to KubeCon. Are there any particular projects to look out for that that are applicable to that cloud native app development?
Oh, well, I guess I already mentioned, but I'll say it again because it's a project which I'm one of the maintainers of. Open feature I think is a great example. So really, what we're trying to do is standardize feature flagging, which is something that I think a lot of companies are starting to realize there's a lot of value here. For example, eBay, like I said, they do 1 trillion feature flag evaluations a day. Companies like Spotify, another company that's been helping us greatly with the project, they have 1,000 feature flags, I think, just in their one mobile application. So these control user experience, they allow you to do targeting of specific customers. So say, everybody from a particular state maybe sees this new feature. It allows you to do experimentation. So roll out a feature 2 different ways to 2 different audiences, however you want to target that segment. And then, like I said, you can use other platforms and other tools to kind of look at the results of that experiment, and then ask yourself. And this is where we're going past app devs and maybe even into PMs, where we can answer questions like, well, is my new feature actually getting traction from customers? Like, are people actually clicking more on this button or using this new function if we display it differently, or if we add this feature, or even maybe remove this feature to make it more simple? I think that, like I said, that's probably the next horizon, even beyond app dev, is really like looking at how can the organization as a whole benefit from these platforms and these standards. I think that's really, really compelling. But from a development standpoint, open feature allows you to basically write your feature flag logic kind of one way, and it's not concerned with where you're getting those feature flag definitions from. So it could be a Kubernetes resource, it could be a homegrown solution, it could be a vendor. So it's another example of how open standards are making things easy for developers and for the people that actually run the platform. So it's been super, super great to see the project grow inside the CNCF. And I think it's a really cool example of a more like developer focused project.
And what's the status of the project in the CNCF right now? Is it sandbox incubating? Like, what's it at?
We've been incubating for about a year now. I believe. I don't remember the exact date, but it's something around a year.
Cool. Oh, nice. And just out of curiosity, like, because there are like feature flagging like companies, like commercial products out there. So is open feature then in serve a purpose in the same way as like open telemetry, where it's a standard for instrumentation? And so it's like how you render that instrumentation that differentiates you as a vendor. Is that the goal behind open feature as well? Like, let's all standardize, even if, like you've got a vendor product on feature flagging, but let's standardize on the stuff going on under the covers.
Yeah, absolutely. So we worked with a lot of the biggest vendors in the space to build our standards, and most of them release open feature providers, which is kind of like the adapter layer, so that you can use their vendor solution with open feature. Yeah, I mean, too many to name, but basically name a feature flag vendor, and they probably support open feature. So yeah, I've definitely said before, for people who are familiar with the landscape, open feature is kind of like the open telemetry of feature flagging. So it's an apt comparison for sure.
Amazing. Other thing that I wanted to ask, Kubecon isn't just about the talks, but it's also about the hallway track. Did either of you experience any fun, interesting hallway track talks? Or not talks, but conversations? If so, would you like to share them?
Let me think.
I had so many great conversations, it's hard to pin one down.
Or I guess even sharing, like, for folks who haven't been to a KubeCon, like, what is the hallway track all about? What's so valuable about it? Maybe let's start with that without necessarily like going into specific conversations. And what do you love about hallway tracks? If you do, maybe you don't.
I think it's mostly about connecting with people, like it's what I see most valuable. Everyone shares their experience, everyone shares their journey through the different stages that they're going through in adopting Kubernetes, sharing challenges. So at least I talk to a bunch of people, and it's always interesting. Like, you get such a variety of where they are in their journey. Some people struggling with basics, just trying to get Kubernetes adopted, and others are building like huge platforms on top and having very specific challenges where they're looking in very specific tools. I think it's really good to see like both ends of the spectrum, talk to these people, and also from us, from a company perspective, like, how can we support them? Like, what are their challenges that they face on a day-to-day basis? Is there anything we as Dynatrace can do? I think that's probably also a question to now here to the community, like what are the things that you think we should better support you in your journey to adopting Kubernetes, managing Kubernetes, or the entire development cycle that you're having?
Yeah, that's a great question. And anyone who's out there, please don't be shy. Feel free to just pop your thoughts in the chat. We want to hear from you. And Todd, like, what were your impressions around like hallway tracks? Anything?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I guess it was more of a booth track than a hallway track.
Fair enough.
I was at our booth for a good portion of that. But I mean, I think the same is true for any project. I love hearing real stories of adopters. One of the things that doesn't get talked about often enough is how difficult it is as a maintainer to get feedback sometimes, especially if things work. Because when you hear from people is oftentimes when they're struggling. So I love to hear just adoption stories of really any CNCF project. Especially interesting to me is how people are combining multiple CNCF projects to make their own solution, like it's Lego blocks. I love hearing about those. And it's so nice to hear about them at KubeCon, because I rarely hear them anywhere else. Like, generally, when I'm hearing from the community, it's because somebody wants a new feature, is willing to contribute a new feature, or found a bug. Does happen sometimes. But just hearing a success story is great and refreshing, and seems to happen more often at KubeCon, when you just see people face to face and they stop by the booth, say, "Hey, I use your project. It was great. It worked. Here's how we used it." That kind of thing. I love that.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think it's so exciting when people are like curious, excited about your project. One thing that you mentioned was like, you know, hearing the end user stories, and I'm actually one of the maintainers of the Open Telemetry end user SIG. And one of the things that we do is like bring our end users together, share end user stories, but also give that feedback from the end users back to the community. So we actually work with a bunch of the SIGs where we run some surveys on their behalf to find out. Like, we actually ran one that ended on the 15th, on the last day of KubeCon, which was, you know, so many people use the Open Telemetry docs. What are your experiences with the Open Telemetry docs? We want to hear the good, the bad, the ugly, so that we can help improve the documentation. And having those feedback loops is so important. I also love your comment about like CNCF projects being used as Lego blocks, because I think like that is the ultimate thing, right? There's so many CNCF projects. They have so many, there's so many useful projects. They complement each other. Some do similar things, but then you can use like features of one, features of another. Are there, I'll pose this to both of you. Are there any interesting combinations of CNCF projects that you've seen, or that, you know, you heard people discuss this past KubeCon where you're like, that sounds really cool?
One I'll give out, which it was pretty interesting the first time I heard it, was I mean, we generally in Open Feature, we're like targeting application developers, like I said, for feature flags, but I saw somebody do basically feature flags to control their Kubernetes cluster behavior themselves with flags. So they were essentially exposing additional controls and features to some of their tenants on their cluster via feature flags, which is not something I'd thought of before. So it was like, yeah, using Open Feature, running on Kubernetes, and instead of just controlling actual application features, controlling the cluster features that they were delivering to customers with our Go SDK. That was pretty cool. I hadn't thought about that. It's a little meta, and that one definitely interested me.
That's awesome. Florian, do you have anything that that stuck out for you?
Not really. I'm just in general fascinated, like what people are building with all those blocks. Like, again, back to platform engineering, you know, like they're picking all these pieces, bunching it together and building this huge platform. And it's like, if you think about the complexity that's behind that, that's just mind-blowing for myself.
Yes.
Like, so many projects stripped together, and in the end everything works, you know, like there's so much manpower in there, so much brain in there to get that everything working. So really fascinating project in general. And
yeah,
I think
and oh, sorry, go ahead.
you mentioned combinations. Like, platform engineering is just a combination of all of these different tools. Like, that's what it is. Like, everyone is picking the pieces that they need, get it in their platform, and build like incredibly things on top. Like, really awesome. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing to remind folks of is, like, you know, CNCF isn't the only source of open source projects. It's definitely a huge umbrella for like all these wonderful open source projects. But I mean, there's so many ways to like stitch different open source projects together. Like I did a couple of years ago, one of the members of like Tag App Delivery are the folks from Kratix, and they have a platform engineering tool that's open source. And I decided, like, I know one of their founding engineers, Abby Bankser, and so when they were getting started out, I'm like, hey, I want to check out your product. So I did a little like experiment of basically using Kratix to deploy Open Telemetry collector capabilities to Kubernetes clusters via the Open Telemetry operator, which was really, really exciting. And it basically allowed engineers to basically provision an Open Telemetry collector like pre-configured for, you know, their organization's setup, and also deploying Jaeger, which is another CNCF app, so that, you know, and deploying a sample app so that they could make sure that the collector worked, right? That they're not just like, I'm deploying this thing, well, I hope it works at some point. So seeing those kinds of combinations, I think, is so exciting. And I think that's what I love so much about CNCF.
It's also incredible how far we've come, you know, like if I think back I think I was was getting started with containers in 2017, working with Docker Swarm back then. And I mean, getting anything running on top of that was like a nightmare, you know? And now you got all these operators, like you can put in a new plugin, as I call all these things that you put on top within a few minutes. Like if you just want to try it out, you know, you spin up the operator and you're basically getting started with these things. That's really for me, like it's a few years back, you know, like, and now we're there. You write one Helm command, probably thing is up and running 10 minutes afterwards, and you just start configuring and then playing around with it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's like magic, right?
Right. It is totally.
Yeah, awesome. Another thing that I want to ask, the solution showcase is so so overwhelming if you've been to a KubeCon, and it's always kind of fun to walk around the various vendor booths, the various like CNCF project booths. And it's like some booths are outrageous in terms of the stuff that they provide. I think I remember there was one that had like donuts, and they also had like you could enter a raffle to get a custom pair of Nike roller skates. Which I'm like, ooh, shiny and pretty. Are there any like memorable booths or like memorable swag? I remember I actually picked up some Dynatrace swag at the Dynatrace booth. There was like a little magnetic kit, and I brought it home to my family. My husband and my daughter are like constantly playing with it. So I would say that piece of swag was a success. Any other like fun swag that y'all like picked up that was like, ooh, love it?
There was somebody who was baking cookies, literally baking cookies at their booth. I can't remember which booth it was now; it escapes me. But that was the first time I've seen that in 6 KubeCons. It's always fun. It's always a fun vibe going through the solution showcase. I also like to play the game in my head of like find the open source booth that is powering the solutions showcase booth, like, because that's how a lot of it works, right? There's like a tiny little open source booth over here that's the underlying technology that's powering like 2 or 3 of these giant kind of booths from companies that are essentially like building an ecosystem or around that. So that's always a little fun game to play if you go to KubeCon and the solutions showcase.
Ooh, that is fun.
What I found cool was the oxygen bar, you know, like
Yes.
I came over from Austria, like it was 3 times in altitude, you know, like when I went running in the morning, I really felt like I'm struggling with getting air over there. And so I joined the oxygen bar. It was really good. And, like crazy ideas that they are having over there. Really enjoyed that one. Have you been at the oxygen bar, any of you?
No, but a couple of my teammates were at the oxygen bar, and I think they were enjoying themselves. So
That's so fun. Really cool experience.
that's awesome. Yeah, it's wild, like the altitude and also the dryness. Like Toronto's
Totally.
where I'm from is like it's a humidish city, like definitely not as dry as Salt Lake City. And I remember getting zapped whenever it like touched doorknobs and stuff. Not used to that.
Yeah, well, good thing we don't have to worry about actually touching any hardware, since we're all cloud native, or else you might be damaging it, especially in Salt Lake City. Yeah, I experienced that too. I definitely got zapped a few times.
Yeah, that's wild if you're not used to it. I did want to mention another kind of two cool areas that I visited. I don't did either of you check out the emotional support dogs? I think
I saw them.
The agenda,
I saw them, but they were anytime I saw them, there was people all over, like kind of like crowding them. So I didn't really get a chance to meet any myself. But yeah, that was cool.
They were so cute. I got to venture over, and I have rats at home. I don't have a dog, but they're so cute. I was like, it made me almost want a dog.
Oh, Henrik landed in Marseille.
Hey, awesome.
We miss you, Henrik.
We do. The other booth that I wanted to mention was so I recently joined the BIPOC working group. It's, oh my god, I'm so bad with acronyms. I think it was, I want to say it's Black, Indigenous, Person of Color. working group. I think that's what it stands for. And it's been really cool. They had like a couple of DEI events while at Kubecon, and I got to meet some of the leaders around that. And the interesting thing is they're taking a lot of their the stuff that a lot of the work that they're doing. They're taking a page out of the success of the deaf and hard of hearing group in the CNCF, and that's been so fascinating to be a part of. Like one of my good friends, Hazel Weekly, who she's, I think, becoming very well known in the platform engineering circles. She is deaf, and she has educated me so much with regards to the types of accommodations that should be made for deaf people. Like even something like we did a live stream with her and Ted Young for Humans of Open Telemetry, where we just got some perspectives on like what's new in open telemetry and perspectives from an end user. And so I mask the whole time when I'm at KubeCon, and she reads lips, and she has a hearing aid. And so when I was interviewing her, I had to make sure that I was at a decent distance that she could hear me. But the other interesting thing that she mentioned to me was, if I can't hear something and I ask for you to repeat it, don't repeat it the same way, because my brain just can't discern the garble. You have to try to figure out to say it in a different way. And that's something for most people who are hard of hearing. And I thought that was so interesting to get that piece of advice. And I wouldn't have known if she hadn't told me. And the other thing that was interesting was seeing like there were ASL interpreters at various points for the talks, especially the keynotes at KubeCon, and they had captions on the screens. And the other thing that I learned that was interesting is a lot of the folks who are deaf and hard of hearing tend to sit in the front row in these types of conferences, right? So that they can be up front to like read lips and see the captions and see the interpreters. So for me, it was so educational seeing that. And there's so much that we can learn from the community. And it's so cool that the CNCF is being inclusive to people in that community, because everybody has something interesting to say in tech. And so the more inclusive we are, like we get these, we get to hear like more of these ideas from different types of people across the globe, which is exciting. So I don't know if either of you had any thoughts around that, or similar things that you've experienced where, you were at KubeCon and you're like, oh my God, that like gave me kind of a new perspective on things.
I mean, I just think it's an underappreciated benefit of the CNCF, honestly, how like diversity in so many ways, diversity in terms of just identity and types of people who are involved in projects, diversity of opinion, diversity of like the enterprises and organizations and like different size and like different kind of verticals they're in, and also diversity of like geography. The amount of different people from different places that have been able to that kind of use KubeCon as a way to cross pollinate has been so good. I mean, I think. Yeah, it's one of the underappreciated things about what the CNCF actually offers. Obviously, they offer kind of like governance standards, and they offer a whole bunch of tooling and stuff like that, and GitHub Actions and workflows. Like those things are all great. Like, but one of the things that I consistently find myself appreciating is just the way that the CNCF brings together so many people from so many different places in different walks and backgrounds, and then really emphasizes the differences and elevates the differences. And diversity is great. It's very helpful to see that sort of thing in KubeCon, but in the CNCF at large. So yeah, definitely agree with you on that one.
I think what I've seen more this year than in the past years, where people now also coming in suits, like it feels that the entire group is kind of attracting business more and more. Like I feel more and more managers are going there, and I think it's a good thing actually, like it brings again more diversity to it. It brings like a new perspective to the entire CNCF thing. Like how do we streamline it? How do we make products out of it, of that all? Like most of the things that are in the CNCF, are powering huge tools, huge platforms again. And I think it's good that it's a good sign that more business people are getting interested in the entire topic, and they're going there and they're looking at the showcases, they're looking at the tracks. And personally, I found it a really good sign, kind of growing up, like it's getting like a real big conference, so to say. Like, it's good to see just many people and all different kind of backgrounds, as you said. Yeah, right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really important. I think it's a cool call out to like having the business people come and attend these types of events, because I think sometimes when we're kind of in the nitty gritty, in the weeds, if you will, sometimes we feel that folks on the business side are so far removed, and vice versa, right? Where there's probably
Totally.
like this chasm that we mutually feel, and so to see more of that, bridging that gap, so we have that mutual understanding of each other's worlds, if you will, I think is so valuable. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention as well is we're seeing a lot of stuff around with so many people from around the world joining KubeCon, and I actually met someone. I talked with someone from Nigeria, and he was sponsored by the CNCF to attend KubeCon, which is amazing. We have so many people from around the world, and one of the things about open source is that the language is predominantly English, and as a result, it does tend to exclude a lot of people who are not necessarily native English speakers, but who are like brilliant individuals. And so it's been really interesting. And maybe both of you can comment for any projects that you're aware of, but I know for sure Open Telemetry, there's been like a big push for internationalization of the Open Telemetry docs. So it's come out in different languages, which has been amazing, and therefore has made it so much more accessible to people in different countries. What have both of you seen in terms of internationalization and other projects?
In our project, it's not something that we've worked with so far, but I mean, I can definitely see that it's something that's going to be coming down the pipe, especially as we move towards graduation, hopefully, fingers crossed. We definitely have usage all over the globe. So getting documentation in multiple languages, of course, is super important. I can see how, especially a project the size of Open Telemetry, that's going to be a huge effort. And I think their graduation is, I think their graduation is probably going to be coming soon. So it makes sense that they would be making efforts towards that.
Is that something like with Open Feature? Is it something where it's like not at that place now, but I mean, I'm assuming at some point that's going to be a consideration, but you're just not there yet because of where you are with the project, kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, we still are developing our specification, and we're still developing our tooling. So I think that's kind of where a lot of our focus is now. I mean, in a lot of our languages and SDKs, our usage is kind of hockey sticking, which sounds great, and I mean, like, trending up very rapidly for those who aren't Canadian. I think that's really great because it means we're getting a lot of usage, but it also means suddenly more feature requests. So again, sometimes more bugs. But as we kind of, I think, get over this, like these humps, that means that it will have more time for things like internationalization. And I mean, we've tried to make documentation a priority from the beginning, as well as our specification, which is a huge part of the project. And we benefited a lot from being able to do our specification after Open Telemetry had worked on theirs. So we got a lot of pro tips at the very beginning on how to structure things that Open Telemetry could only, they have the benefit of, we have the benefit of hindsight. They didn't, right? So they were really helpful on that. We had a lot of help there from them.
That's awesome. How about you, Florian? Any observations, thoughts on seeing that trend?
Not really in that space, to be honest, but I found it a really interesting question. Like, I didn't think about that that much, but it makes totally sense. Like the more you open up in internationalization and all these things, the more people you can get in. And there's so many bright minds, that just don't grow up speaking English or didn't get the chance. And whatever we can do to integrate them, we should do. So it's a really good thing.
Awesome. I wanted to ask as well. We touched a little bit about on AI, the hot topic. So 2 questions. First off, I would say, having attended the last couple of KubeCons, AI seems to be top of mind in a lot of the keynotes. Thoughts around that? Anything that excites you? Are you finding there's AI fatigue? What's the trajectory around AI that, or what's some exciting stuff around AI that you hope to see?
That's a good question. I mean, probably I can talk about one keynote that I found really good. That was the one by CERN. They showed how they improved Q, and it was a really good keynote. Like, it was just interesting to see like the challenges that they have. Like, they have clusters spread all over the world, basically, where they run AI workloads, and they basically created a tool that is smart enough to scatter these on the right clusters where there's space, and they can like make sure that all of them run in parallel, which you very often need if you train an AI model. So, and I found the talk very tangible, like they had great animations in the talk. It was really easy to follow. While it was a very complex thing to solve in the background, they presented it really easy to understand. So that's something that I found really good. And in general, I think it's just the way to go, like more and more companies are starting to train AI models, like everyone is getting in the AI game. So we will see more and more AI workloads running on Kubernetes. And I think the challenge for Kubernetes probably itself is, and that's why you get this tools like Kubernetes was built for deployments, more or less, like that run constantly, while all these training workloads are very much jobs, like they are batched, they are scattered things. And I think that's why there are tools evolving around it. And I'm curious to see like if Kubernetes itself will also step up that game and I don't know, improve general jobs distribution or build something baked into Kubernetes itself. So that's something that I'm interested in.
That's cool. That would be cool, actually.
There are a couple Kubernetes projects that themselves benefit from AI or use AI to kind of power some of their features. So one that comes to mind is actually he was a contributor to OpenFeature in the early days, but he has another project called K8s GPT or K8s GPT, which is basically like it can run as a controller or as just a command line utility, but it helps you troubleshoot your Kubernetes cluster using AI.
Ooh,
if you're just learning Kubernetes, it's a super helpful tool, especially because you can be like, what does it mean that this pod can't be scheduled? What I don't understand that. And it can tell you in plain English kind of what these errors mean. So it's a really fun way to get started if you're not too familiar with Kubernetes, especially. I don't have a link to the project off the top of my head, but if you search it, I'm sure you'll find it. So it's cool to see. It's cool to see that as well. I'd say that back to the open standards thing, which I think is probably something we could say is a theme of this talk. The getting data in a standardized way is what allows AI to work, right? Like that's really what we're talking about. AI operates on data. It operates on data at scale. So having common solutions for telemetry, having common tools to solve patterns in a common way only allows us to actually be able to rely on AI more reliably and more consistently. So I think that's kind of one of the reasons why AI comes up so much on top at Kubernetes, on top of the fact that it's just kind of a trending topic.
And one thing that I think that we need to be aware of because of AI is like the amount of processing power that AI takes up, of course, has an impact on the carbon footprint. And as we start seeing, so many news headlines about like extreme weather events, I was in Austria in September and I got caught in those torrential rainstorms. I was supposed to go from Vienna to Linz, and I could not travel by train because of that. And so like we're seeing these, extreme weather events. And so like there's that fine line between like the computing power, energy consumption taken up by AI, but also using AI to kind of help us moderate our consumption. And I think that'll be a very interesting thing to look out for.
Maybe on the AI topic, Todd, did you also see that we integrated AI into our Kubernetes app? Like we are also helping users to understand Kubernetes more. And if we have some time, I could briefly showcase it.
Ooh.
Very cool. I actually wasn't aware of that.
That's awesome.
I have some familiarity with the Dynatrace Kubernetes app, and when I last saw it, it was really cool. So it's also exciting to know that now we have some actual AI in there as well.
Give me a second.
I'm
just trying to get my screen shared here. Whoops. Let's see if that works. Can we bring that up?
Oh, there it is.
Awesome. So what you can do in our app is like, there's so many things in Kubernetes, like conditions, and all these warning events. Like I struggle myself all the time to understand them. And what we've built in is you can just ask Davis CoPilot, like, what is this thing? And what it does, it pops up a new window, and basically Davis AI CoPilot starts to explain you these things. So it explains you what is Zoom killing. It explains you what are typical root causes. So why are these things happening? And for all of these root causes, it also tells you how you can remedy them. So again, really easy built-in knowledge around Kubernetes. And I myself struggling all the time with all the Kubernetes events and all the different signals. Like, they are endless. So yeah. I really love this feature, and it helps me so much when I'm looking at any Kubernetes problem. Like, really something cool that's getting out hopefully soon. We just demoed it at KubeCon at our booth, and yeah, we're now looking also in internal previews, and hopefully soon afterwards it goes out to everyone.
That is so exciting.
That's actually super cool to see. Yeah, I'm stoked about this.
I don't know about you, but I could have really used this when I was starting out in Kubernetes.
Totally. And it's not just about starting out, like I'm now with Kubernetes since 4 years, and I'm still seeing events that I have no idea about. Like I can use this really, really, really well.
I know those sometimes those error messages in Kubernetes are like so scary. You're like, oh God, please somebody help me. And now we have AI, or like, does Davis AI also help with like, can you tell me the Kubernetes command for block? Because like, I'm always looking for Kubernetes commands for like log tailing. Oh my God.
Sure, we have the CoPilot built-in chat feature that you can basically use to ask these questions. So
this is what I need in my life. That is awesome. Yeah, thanks for doing the demo for that. Amazing. How are we on time? Are we wrapping up? I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, I think we have about 2 minutes left.
Okay, we do have 2 minutes left. All right. Well, I mean, I think this demo was like kind of the perfect way to end things off with a wowie sort of thing. Final thoughts on KubeCon, or who are you planning on attending London? Hopefully.
Yes, really looking forward to London, and I guess it will be, and again, the next best or the best KubeCon. Like I feel every KubeCon that I'm attending is better than the last one. It's so great to see this event evolving. Really looking forward to London now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm planning on being at KubeCon London, as well as a few of our maintainers. So again, I'm very lucky to have like a opportunity to see all of the people who are closer to Europe. We have a very geographically distributed set of maintainers and contributors. So it's awesome to meet people for the first time face to face at KubeCon. So I use that. I take every opportunity I can to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, same. We have a lot of wonderful open telemetry contributors from Europe, and I'm always so excited to meet up with the European colleagues in person. So I'm definitely stoked for that. Definitely stoked for London. I think it'll be a blast. Kubecon never disappoints, and it's always great. It's like a friends reunion too. You just keep meeting more and more people along the way, and so like your little friend group increases. So yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you both for joining today, and we're glad to hear that Henrik made it home to Marseille. Yeah, it's been a blast, and definitely looking forward to the next KubeCon.
Thanks
Yeah,
for
for
having
sure.
me. It was really good.
Yeah.